Alright, today we've got a aftermarket stereo that we're installing, and we're having trouble with not actually getting any sound out of it once we hooked it up. So what we've got here is this is a aftermarket amp controller of some sort. I don't know what it is, but what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that we have amp control voltage coming out of this blue wire to turn this on, to turn on the factory amp. So first thing, we're going to turn on the key, let the stereo come on, and I'll show you here what it does. Comes onto the radio. This is a local station where we should be getting signal. We turn the volume all the way up, we're getting absolutely no sound out of any speaker anywhere in the vehicle. We're also going to go home, go to the settings. We're going to go to the sound settings, wherever they are. Volume settings. See if I can find it. Settings, sound settings. And we come over here, and we can move this dot over here, over here, over here, so that then we can focus all the sound on one speaker out of the vehicle, which we are getting none. So now, we're going to check and see if we actually have voltage to that amp wire, because that'll tell us if it's allowing power through to the speakers. Go to the radio, verify that the sound's all the way up, so it should have sound coming through. We take our multimeter, hook one side to ground, which I have up here in the dash, and then I'm going to take the other side and use a paper clip to back probe the plug, so I don't have to actually take the plug out and the stereo shut off, so I can check and see what it's doing while it's operating. I've taken and set my voltmeter to DC volts. I'm going to take the paper clip. I'm going to go to the amp control wire, which in some vehicles it's a blue wire, some vehicles it's a blue and white stripe. But right there, we can see we're actually getting no voltage. Now, just to verify that we do have some sort of voltage, we're going to go to the red wire, which should be the accessory, and you can see we have 11.7 volts, which that is low, but the vehicle hadn't been started in a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and cycle the key off, and that shows that our volts drop down to 0. So what that means is we can actually hook into that red wire and use that to control our amp instead of the amp control wire, since we're not getting voltage through it. Now we're going to shut off our voltmeter. We're going to go ahead and take this over to the bench, and we're going to disconnect the amp wire from here, and we're going to connect it directly to the red wire. And we're just going to see what it does. Since it's an accessory wire, it'll kick it on when we need it to, and it'll shut off anytime the vehicle shut off. So, alright, let's go to the bench. Alright, so here we've got our harness that we pulled out of the vehicle. We've got our amp control wire, and we want to connect that to this red wire here, because that's what our accessory power is, comes on and off with the key. So we're going to go ahead and dissect this solder joint here. See if we can anyway. Sneak my nippers down in there. This is the marine grade shrink fit, so it can be quite the hassle to remove without damaging the wire. Which I did just damage that a little bit right there, but we're not going to use that amp wire right now, so we'll be okay. We're going to go ahead and just take our soldering iron, if it's hot, put a dab of solder on it, get it cleaned off a little bit, bump that off, put a little dab more on there. And that's going to help with the heat transfer to break this solder joint apart. So now we're not even going to use this one here anymore. So we're going to just nip that off flush. And we'll come back and put a little dab of shrink fit on that. Now this one here is the one we actually want to hook into our red accessory wire, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to take the knife out, see if we can dissect this joint without damaging too much. Looks like there was a poor solder joint on this anyway, so it kind of needs to be repaired. Just go ahead and dissect that right there. Drop our knife on our foot. Now again, we're going to take and dab just a little bit of solder on our soldering iron here. Bump that off, put a little bit on there to help transfer the heat to this solder joint so we can remove it just like that. Now we've got another wire here that we ended up not using, so we remove that. Now, before we solder this back up, we want to make sure we have another piece of shrink fit put onto our wire. I like to get it as far as I can away from where I'm working so I don't accidentally shrink it up just a little bit. So now I'm going to take that amp wire. Well, it looks like we may end up needing one size bigger. Yep. See if the next size up will fit over these two wires very well. Doesn't look like it will either, so we're going to bump it up one more size. Well, let's see here. I like to go about 1/4 inch at least on both sides of the solder joint. But I don't like to use too much because this makes the wire real stiff and then it's prone to break. So we slip that on there. Now we're going to take soldering iron. See how much of this old solder we can get pulled off here. Alright. Now we're going to clean off our soldering iron. just going to take and put a little bit more solder on these. Get this one here bent out where I can work on it. Alright. And now, if I can find them, I've got a pair of these surgical pliers that work real good for clamping the wire together while you're soldering it. The farther away you are, the better, because the insulation will get soft and it'll end up collapsing down. You don't want it to end up breaking through. So now, clean off your soldering iron again. And then we'll get ready to solder this. See if we can get this bent down where it'll lay together pretty well. I doubt we really can, because these wires have been soldered multiple times. But we're going to just lay this right in here. See if we can get it all to melt together. There we go. Now it's all in there together. Not a very good solder joint right now, but we can test it out like this. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and heat shrink that because I don't want to come back later. Call me lazy if you want. So feel where your solder joint is. And then plug in your heat gun. And I like to start from the center and then move out the edges, because this heat shrink does have a goo in it that actually melts out towards the ends. So I like to melt it in the center and push it out toward the edges. And just like that, we've got a nice covered solder joint. Got that blue stripe wire in there for the amp. And now we're good to try this out. Take it back over the car and try it. Alright, so now we've got our wires back in here. We do not have our steering wheel control hooked back up, but that's just fine. We're going to go ahead and plug this into here. Plug the other end back into our head unit. If we get the plug the right way. Now we're going to look for our antenna wire. Get that plugged in. Alright. Now we're going to take the key, turn it on, and be ready for the stereo to be blaring. Hopefully. There we go. Now we've got sound. Let's see if we can actually get a radio station here. There we go. And now we've got our stereo fixed, and we are good to go. throw your dash all back together, and you'll have your stereo working so you're ready to jam out.